Welcome to Talkin Maine with the Bowtie Boy. I'm Tom Seviello, and I have my special friend and special guest, Mike Shepard. Michael, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Tom.
We're going to talk about the election.
We are.
I think I may end up having to owe you a beer or something. This is bad.
We'll see how the scorecard winds up here.
So what is it? Quite a night the other night, huh?
It was, yeah. Obviously, I think all of us were expecting a closer election, particularly in Maine, than the one we got. This was a rout, and I've never seen a midterm like it for the party in power here. The Democrats just kind of held serve. Yeah. Janet Mills, huge win over Paul LePage. Jared Golden has to go to a ranked choice vote, but he's going to win over former Representative Bruce Poliquin. Legislature basically stayed status quo, 22-13 in the Senate in the legislature, and then 82 seats for the Democrats. So basically, just a total hold.
And it was a surprise. I mean, we talked about this before. The Republicans missed the boat. They really did. I mean, they harped on something, but I thought about this. They harped on the economy. Mm-hmm. I think if the election was taking place next year, or let's say this winter when the price does go crazy, people will start to say, oh, they're really true. But right now they haven't seen that. And they do have extra cash in their pocket. Because if they're working on their job, there have been salary increases that have happened because they've had to bump up the base level to hire somebody. That mm-hmm. means they had to bump up the rest of the people to keep them on. And so there's more money I can see it in our store. People are still spending money. Thank you, please. But they're still spending money. But their message just did not resonate.
Well, I think what happened there was the Republicans were trying to harp on the economy, and they were trying to tag Janet Mills and Democrats at the state level for it. I just don't think people bought it, frankly. There was some polling before the election that showed maybe 4 or 5% of people blamed state officials mostly for costs. I think everyone kind of realizes, of course, there are things that the state can do, but it really is not a state issue. I mean, you look at heating oil prices; they're starting to rise, no question about it. Some parts of the state, we're getting up towards $6 a gallon. But they're doing the same thing in New Hampshire. Yeah. They're doing the same thing. They're doing the same thing everywhere, and we rely on it more, and it hits us harder. So these are absolutely real issues, and attempts to downplay them were always kind of silly. But it looked, especially Jared Golden at the end of the campaign, I think really took the idea of costs head on. Didn't look like he was ducking it. Janet Mills ducked it a little bit. Was focusing on she was doing abortion rights rallies up till almost the end. So I think the economy was still a major issue in this election, but they didn't buy a Republican's prescription.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. We can blame Janet for inflation. Of course, Russell Black, I gave him the devil that an independent expenditure came to the House that showed a fuel tank on the front.
Right.
Vote for Russell Black. He's going to reduce your oil costs. So I immediately called Russ up and said, hey, Russ, so you want me to send you my propane bill to your house so you can start taking off some of the price that you're going to save?
Right.
I didn't know you could control all that stuff. And he laughed.
Yeah, I mean, I think everyone kind of was in on the joke there. I mean, it's just not. If you're running for the legislature, you've got lots of things you can do, lots of important things. But again, and they're going to be talking, I think, in January about what they're going to do to help relieve some pressure, and I think that's probably going to take the form of a check or something like we've seen already. But look, that's about all the state can do. They can spend money, or they can take less money out of your pocket, and that's what they can affect.
The one I got to look into that apparently at the very end of the campaign, the Republicans talked about that Janet could have brought in high sulfur fuel for heating oil. Have you heard this one?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's it's being talked about with kerosene mostly, and it's a way that if kerosene supplies get low, they can bring kerosene basically from Quebec and New Brunswick, and they have, but it's really about reserves. It's not so much about relieving costs now, and it was mostly a diversion. I talked to some industry folks, and they weren't asking for a waiver for high sulfur heating oil. It was really about kerosene, and that's if the supplies in the state, which are looking, short but okay, it can get through the winter. So that's more about that.
And kerosene is so important up here because you can put your tank outside. The oil doesn't freeze.
It's a really big thing in mobile homes too, but it's going to be it's awful right now. Frankly, I mean, it's $7-8 a gallon for kerosene because it's the same thing that's used for jet fuel, right? So there's a bump in travel. A lot of it's going over there, so it's really putting pressure on people who need it the most.
So should we open our envelopes and see how we did?
We should set it up first for the people.
Okay, so set it up. So about In September, Mike came on the show and we talked about what was going on. October, we came in and we had, I think it was 6 questions.
Early October, right?
Early yeah, it was early October. Yeah. And so we set up a couple of questions. You actually have the questions in your thing. So
yes.
So why don't you read the first question? So then we decided we did put it in a sealed envelope, and the one who gets the closest.
Right.
I think looking at this, I might not be too bad off.
We'll see. So the first question was whether Mills or LePage would win. We both picked Mills.
Right. So we both got a point there.
You said 4-point differential for Mills.
You got 5, so you get.
I got 5, so I get the point because it's actually
That's right. So
up to 12 or 13.
2 points for Mike, even though it was 14. We were way off.
We're using Price is Right scoring.
But you know, the thing that surprised me about that is that I actually thought when I said my 4 is that she was going to go into it on the polls up by about 9. Mm-hmm. But that would be that 5% that wouldn't answer the question on the poll. And that's why it was less than that. But they all held true. Okay.
Yeah, so I mean, and what you saw there, I mean, we were talking about it before we came on the air here, it's just even the towns that were LePage towns coming in early on were slim. You know, we saw both, you know, because we know it well, Jay was a really good example of that. It went kind of narrowly for Paul LePage and then went about the same margin for Jared Golden. So you saw right there, I think, how this was going to be a rough election for the Republicans.
Yeah.
And then as the night went on, it obviously
got worse.
Bore out.
Worse? Got worser? Is that a word?
Yeah, it got worse. That's for sure.
So Golden. We both had Golden.
Yep.
So we get a point there. I had him by 4. You had him by 2.
It's looking close. So we were doing the first round on that one. So I think you get the point there.
I get the point there. So
he's up a 3.5.
Yeah, 3.5. So we're tied now at 3-3. All right. Then D's, you had 1916. What I have, 1817.
Oh well. Before we do that, we both said ranked choice needed.
Yeah.
And that's a yes. So yes, state senate R or D. What did you have?
I had a D, I think. You got it.
No, we both had Democrats.
Both had Democrats, so we get a point there. Both of us. You had 1916. What did I have?
You said by 1.
By 1.
So I win on that one.
So you win that one because that would have been 1817. So Mike wins there. Okay. So you're ahead by 1 right now.
Yep. And then we go to the state house.
Yeah.
We both said Democrats.
Yep.
But you said by how many? And you said 3. And I this is where I think I win.
Well, so how many were in the house before to start? Oh, by 3. So I would have been at 78. So yeah, you win.
Right.
You had 80, and it was actually 81.
It's 82.
82.
Yep.
So Mike wins that one. So you got another. You're up 2 points. Oh God, I'm in trouble. Then we went to the U.S.
This was a bonus round though, so I think this is a tiebreaker, right?
That was the bonus round is at the end, right? Come on now.
It's because he needs the points.
Yeah, I do. So we're both going to win that one because we both had it as D. Oh no, you had it as D.
Yeah, I had the Senate as.
No wonder you want this in the bonus round.
No, I had the Senate. Yeah, I had the Senate as D, but I had the House as R.
Okay, and the Senate right now is undecided.
Right.
So that we got to hold. So we're
going to
hold there, and you had it 51-49. So if I win, because what I have it again.
You have it as a D, but I don't see a margin here for you.
Okay, so we're tied. You're right. And then the Republican. What did I have for the House?
You had the House going Republican, but you don't have margins on here.
Oh, so
I went a little more.
You win
more in depth.
Oh, so I owe you a beer.
Well, I mean, we'll see. We can't. We had the same direction, so you can't win.
Yeah, I can't. That's right. We're on the same side. So.
All right.
Oh man, but I did all mine just off the top of my head.
Well, so did I. I did it right here.
No, you had all the polling stuff back in your shop.
I did it right here on the couch.
Yeah, you had all the polling stuff in the shop. You knew.
All right.
Yeah. It was an interesting night. I was with Jared. He invited us down to his family's place, and first thing I was really impressed is the youth that was in the place. I don't know, how was it at LePage's? Was there a lot of young people like your age?
He had some young staff. He has some young staffers, but the party, I wasn't there, so I can't vouch for it. And we were really focusing on the crowd when things were winding down. But no, I mean, Jared, when you're talking about Golden's, it was kind of a closed party, so it was the people who were closest to him. He didn't do a traditional election night party where he bring the public in and the press in and all that. So it's a little little different.
It was different. It was like a family night. It was. I
Right.
say that at Jared's.
More like a family party.
It was a family party.
Yeah.
His parents were there. Joe and his mom were there, and we talked quite a bit. They still like my commercial from 4 years ago. And what was fascinating to me is, as I started to share before the show, I got to go into the war room because you have the barn, which is like the lodge for the golf course, or the clubhouse. And then the back is where you pay when you come in, and it's a separate room. And everybody was in there with their computers pulling up all the results. So, and I had never been there for an extended period of time in any race. So I went in, they all knew me, and I was allowed to stay. And in fact, they let Christine come in and a few others come in and stay because they had nothing to hide. I mean, that was, again, it was very transparent. And they had 4 computers up, and they had the New York Times one up. Mm-hmm. And the New York Times apparently has a formula that they kick in to predict as the votes start to come in when they're very small. It's way skewed one way or the other. So in the beginning, LePage Republican is winning because some of the smaller towns are more conservative, and it shows his chances of winning way high. And then as more come in, it goes.
Yeah, I mean, and if you really know what you're looking at, if you really knew it from the beginning what you were looking at, you could tell right off the bat. We talked about Jay, but there were just some other places where even though the Republicans were winning, they just weren't winning.
Big margin.
Almost anywhere by the margins that they needed to win the state. And when we saw for Mills, when we saw the service centers come in, the cities, I mean, she just ran it up her margins in South Portland were 10 points higher than they were in 2018, and they were already high as it was. But it was just a total shellacking.
So yeah, so South Portland was significant, but it was Portland that was the killer.
Well, yeah, I mean, and you expect that in Portland, but it was really, I mean, look, LePage lost Wyndham, he lost Gray, I believe. There were places like that where you're a Republican running for a statewide office, you really gotta win.
And Wyndham, that was a surprise in the state Senate race.
Yeah,
Gary Plummer. That is, it used to be that when Plummer ran, Diamond didn't.
Right.
When Diamond ran, Plummer didn't, because both of them never wanted to go head to head because it would be a very close race, and they're both very popular and well liked down there. Mm-hmm. Plummer comes back. I figured, oh well, he's going to get elected.
I think Republicans were counting. Well, I already had that seat in the basket.
And he lost.
Yeah, and very narrowly, but he lost.
He lost, and I don't know how much Gary went out and campaigned, knowing him. And feeling very confident, he did very little. I told people, I said, if the guy, whoever's running against him, spends the time out in the district, he will win. Yep. And apparently, I think he did.
Yeah, there were only two seats that changed in this election. It's the one in Waterville, the former fire chief Dave LaFountain, and Eric Brakey flipped that was expected, but he went by the skin of his teeth. He flipped the Auburn seat.
So I actually drove Brakey around.
You did?
You know what? Brakey wrote a very nice comment on Facebook or someplace that he's really intense in how in getting out and getting to know people and so forth. And he said, "I'm following my friend Tom Saviello." Yeah. I said, "Oh, okay." Well, Eric and I got along great when he was in the Senate. Eric was very different. Has a different way of doing stuff, but I admired him because he took over DHHS as his committee as a rookie, and what a mess that place was. And he had his values, he stuck to them. But so I said, I'll drive you around. So he had a plan. I mean, Mike, he had an app on his phone, and he knew we and I were going to do Durham. So we met at the Durham public parking lot down there. And he said, okay, we got to go to this house. And he said, we're stopping at these. These are people that vote all the time or vote most of the time. And then wherever we see an American flag, we're going to stop. Mm-hmm. So he told me, he said, go here next. And the phone automatically pulled up the route of where I had to drive. So I think that day we did 50 doors in half a day. So he really had a plan to go out there. And he had a very consistent message that he stuck with. Yep. So I'm not surprised he won.
No, and they've spent a lot of money against him, and he won very narrowly. So he needed, and I heard he did, 5,000 doors, maybe more than that?
It wouldn't surprise me, because if he did 50 with me, and if he was doing from Labor Day on, and say that's 60 days, the math, it's pretty close to that.
Yeah, I mean, he's always been a campaigner, and his runs for high office have not gone well. He ran for Senate in 2018, and he ran for Congress in 2020 and lost in the primary, but the guy's dogged.
He's dogged.
You can't take anything away from him on that front.
Cannot take it away from him, and he goes for it, and he knows how to use technology. Mm-hmm. I mean, when he ran against against Cleveland, who was then the incumbent, who had been around forever down in the Auburn
2014,
area. And we didn't think he was going to beat him, because when we first polled, he was behind by 20 points.
Right.
we didn't give him any help, but he did this tenacious knocking on every door, going out and spending the time, and he wins by 20 points. Yeah, won easily. Yeah. So Caribou, that's an interesting one.
Well, that was the race of the night, in my opinion. It was $1 million was spent on the race to keep Senate President Troy Jackson up in office, and he won. He beat Representative Sue Bernard, who's from Caribou, not only in the district but in Caribou, which went for LePage and went for Bruce Poliquin as well. So.
Oh, I hadn't seen those numbers
Jackson
yet.
was doing something special up there.
Well,
and,
my sister-in-law, I have in-laws that live in Caribou. And so I asked her, I said, what's going on? How is Sue Bernard going to do? And she said, Sue Bernard is not well liked in Caribou. And so all these meetings I was in about this election, and they would say, well, Jackson's going to lose. And I often said, well, I think that's going to be an important seat. It could be the 18th seat. Yep. But I said, don't write off Troy, because she is not well liked. So I got the email this morning and said, you were right. She lost big time.
Well, you got to look at the seat when you really got to look at things when Democrats are going to spend what $750,000 trying to hang on to it, and they clearly. I mean, let's not let them beat their chest too much, right?
No,
I mean, they must have seen something here. They must have seen something here that worried them, and they went out and they absolutely swamped the Republicans. So, is this a great populist uprising up in the county? I don't, frankly, buy it. I mean, I think this was a candidate who has some unique strengths. He's been NRA endorsed for his whole career. He's got some unique attributes. Very progressive on economic issues, but socially, he's in step with the district, except for probably his stance on abortion, which is, he's very pro-abortion rights. It wasn't always like that, but he is now. So you can't read into it too much. I think sometimes we give the candidate who wins too much credit, but they can claim it because they won. So.
Well, the interesting thing is Sue Bernard, in my time down there, she was not in the legislature when I was there.
Yeah, she's only a freshman. Right
freshman, and she didn't do very much. In fact, people will tell you she never showed up for committee meetings. So I just left the radio station. Rick Davis knows her because he used to have his station up there and used to live up there. And he was up there this weekend, and all her ads were on TV were, I used to be your newspaper broadcast. I used to be your broadcaster. Yeah. Nothing else. No other substance to it. She didn't give anything to it. And that, her own commercials, not the ones that other people spent money on. But they also, that was why I relished it, is they sent a guy like Charlie Webster up there to help win for Sue, and he lost.
Yeah.
It doesn't break my heart.
Old rivalry, old Farmington rivalry.
Yeah, a little bit of one. Well, my 5 guys won. I'm bipartisan. I had Russell Black, I had Randy Hall, I had Scott Landry. I think all 3 of those guys have gone down to out of this district and represented them very well, and done what they could do to help us out.
They work together too.
And they work together very closely together. And then I voted for Janet. I really came down to it that 4 more years of Paul LePage couldn't make it for me. I couldn't do it. He hasn't changed, and clearly his parting farewell as he probably drives to Florida was not very appropriate.
No, I mean he called Janet Mills an elitist on the way out, and said he accepted the results of the election, but wasn't really. I don't know. Usually when you say that, it's a concession, but it wasn't really a concession. I mean, the difference is so stark. From 2018, Republican nominee Sean Moody gives Janet a call and congratulates her, right? And he says that look, I take the medicine. I lost, and I feel bad about it, right? But that's the way it was. And we had a great photo of him kind of grimacing right on the front page of the paper. But it was but that's what you do. That's what you do in a campaign, right? You come out and you say, I lost. Congrats.
Your message.
Whatever I can do to help.
Right.
Let me know. And look, they usually don't ask for your help after that, right? But it's what you do.
True. Yeah. It's true. I mean, it's right. But that was the right way to do it. I mean, even if you go back to 2020, if Trump had done that, this country would be so much better off. Just said, I don't like what happened. I have my doubts about what happened. But the fact is, if people spoke, I'm ready to move on. Let's just stop it. But that can't happen.
Yeah, and he never called her personally either, according to what I was hearing as of yesterday.
Oh, he still hasn't called her.
That's what I was hearing yesterday.
Well, you got to remember, those two are like this anyway.
Yeah, so it doesn't functionally matter. It doesn't really change anything. But it's just one of those signs that there's a lot of bitterness there, and it's not going away. The
one thing I give Janet credit for, and I even told her this when we talked, she debated him. She didn't have to. She went right after him, and she's a prosecutor, so she could handle herself.
Yeah, they did 4 debates on TV, another one that was off air.
In the chambers, that's 5 debates. That's an incumbent doing 5 debates. That helped. I think at the end helped her too, because it showed him that he just didn't have the ability to do that.
Yeah, all of them seemed like stalemates too. I mean,
it
was
nobody hit a haymaker or a home run.
No, but it was just kind of it seemed like Governor Mills, right, just kind of let him go and shot back when she needed to. There wasn't much aggression, but it seemed like she was almost in maintenance mode, and maybe they knew something we didn't at that point.
So, and you guys covered it. You did a great job. Thanks. I mean, you've done a great job covering this election. I will share that with you, because you went after the, what's true and what's not true. Mm-hmm. You got the information out there. There's people can make their own evaluation of it. Much appreciated. I read your highlights every morning. I said, let's see what Mike has to say. The only thing that drove me crazy, it wasn't you, and I shared this with you, was on Channel 8. They took the one ad about Janet, about she increased our gas tax, she increased our grocery tax, and Phil Hirschhorn did a really good job, in-depth analysis about why that wasn't true. And right after he finished, they ran the commercial. And I wrote him and I said, Phil, I don't get it. You've done a really good job blowing this up. Why does your station continue to run this commercial?
No, we know the reason for that.
Exactly right. And it's like, and then some comments came back to me, like, well, they have to be very careful about freedom of speech. I said, no, they don't. I said, you can still run that ad, but push back on them. Yeah. Push back on more facts, but it's all about money.
Stations do reserve the right to take stuff off the air, but in my experience, they never do. And it's just going to, look, these campaigns are just going to get worse and worse as we go on.
Worse and worse. I mean, and again, what's cool, and I said it on the radio this morning, Mainers saw through it all. They didn't get caught up by it. They saw through it. They all knew Janet Mills didn't create inflation. Janet Mills didn't increase the price of oil. They saw through all of that stuff.
Well, yeah, and Republicans, I mean, they were using it. They weren't the first to do this. I mean, this is something that goes. I mean, it goes back forever. If you have bad times and you're in control, you got to expect you're going to get some blowback. But I think you're right that voters saw that this was a broader problem, maybe something that they wish the governor would do about it. But look, there's just a lot of baggage here. I mean, Republicans really got to look in the mirror about this election. They ran 2 guys who have not really proven to be broadly popular. LePage obviously got through 2 elections. Poliquin got through 2 elections. But they're different elections, right? They were, LePage had the 3-way split. Poliquin had a really weak opponent in 2014 and 2016 in Emily Kane. That just didn't really fit the district at that point. And so we could have kind of had the same analysis on day 1 of this campaign that we had after yesterday. It's just, did you think Paul LePage and Bruce Poliquin were going to be the guys to do this? And I think, looking down the road, they got to look at some people with fresher faces and broader appeal, because this ain't working.
Oh, that's just what I told some of them this morning that I know well. They got to find a way to get more people engaged, like a Roger Cates, Chris Rector, Brian Langley, even though poor Brian got crushed up in Bar Harbor, and it's too bad because he shouldn't have run again. But those people that are moderate thinkers, because we're going to bring, and like myself was, we're going to bring a group of votes with us that we normally don't get. But because we don't vote with them 100% of the time, 80% of the time, they're not happy with us. So we're rhinos. Well,
all those guys have been essentially drummed out of politics. Brian Langley has been the Republican standard bearer down there, but he got crushed. So I don't know if guys like you are exactly the answer, but because you're not playing in the party anymore.
Right.
But I think there are younger people in the party who are focused more on what people will find is popular, and I don't think LePage was ever really projecting that out. I think there are times when he had some good instincts in the past, but I know me by like myself, because I'm done. Yeah. But I'm thinking more people that are moderate thinking about things like abortion. Things about taxes, that they can blend it together, but they get drummed out of the party. We're not wanted. We're kicked out. Well, the party's more conservative than it was 10 years ago, and in 2010, you could have never passed. Even when Republicans had control, you never could have passed an anti-abortion bill, because there were so many of you would have voted against it. Right. So the party is more socially conservative now. No bones about it. But question is, can they win these big, broad elections? And look, they thought they had a chance at the House the other day, and they really didn't. They didn't make any dent at all. So
is Poliquin done?
You can never say never with this guy. He's run so many times since 2010, but I just don't see much of an appetite this time. The last time around in 2018, the party was sort of saying that he had problems with his base. This time around, he was campaigning with LePage all the time, kind of hoping that he would lift him up. And he did okay in some of these areas, but just not enough whatsoever to get him up over the top. There's not really much else to bring out there, I think. For
have
Bruce.
you looked at who had more votes in the 2nd District, Poliquin or LePage?
I haven't broken it down yet, but I would bet that it's LePage. I mean, Poliquin's around 45% right now, and LePage is down at 42. So you got to think that LePage's average is kind of skewed by the 1st District. So I mean, I think you got to it would be for LePage.
So last question: is LePage done?
I think so. I think this was I haven't heard anything. This is just my feeling. But look, he's 74 years old. He's been through it. He's been at the top of this Maine's party structure for a little while. I don't think the voters took kindly to bringing him back this time around. A lot of the stuff we heard at the polls was just kind of personal dislike for Paul LePage and what he brought, and and not even so much about how his campaign ran, but about how he was in the past.
Yeah.
And I don't see the statewide environment improving for a candidate like that. I think if Republicans are going to win statewide, and I think they still can, frankly, Susan Collins showed us that it's possible. But I think I think if you want to win these statewide elections, you got to go a little bit further in that direction than in this direction.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, that's what they're going to have to do, to find a way to bring that kind of a person on, and I think they also have to clean out their staff in Higgins Street. You start over with people that are thinking like that are not focused on super conservatives, and find a way to work together.
Well, that's what usually happens, but
see.
But still, there's lots of conservatives are in control of that party right now at the state level. So who knows?
Well, Mike, this has been a pleasure. Will you just come back on and chat? Well, when we get back into session in January or February, we'll have you come back.
Yeah, we'll see what's going on down there.
See what's going on.
Yep.
See what's happening. It's going to be interesting to follow, because the Democrats clearly got a message, and they can go forward with what they need to do. And Janet clearly got a message. She's doing a good job.
I guess so. I mean, that's what they're going to take away.
That's what I would take away if I were them.
Yeah.
It's always a pleasure, Mr. Shepard.
Thank you very much.
I owe you beer.
That's right.
You have to let me buy it,
We'll
though.
cash it in.
Usually,
We'll cash it in.
all right.
Yeah.
You promise. All
right.
right.
We did it. It's all transparent. Everyone
That's
can
right.
see
So
it.
everyone can see it. So thanks for tuning in to Talkin Maine. We'll see you next time.